Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Home Care Hot Seat. Today I'm joined by Max Permentier and Rajiv Tanna, the CEO and Chief Product Officer at Birdie, the all-in-one home care software platform. Max and Rajiv, who co-founded the company in 2017, will be talking to me about the history of the company and their mission to transform care at home so that elderly people can live healthier and happier lives. Okay, so thank you so much, Raj and Max, for joining me today. Really appreciate your time. So could you just tell me, first of all, about the history of Birdie and where the idea for the business came from?
No, absolutely. So the history of Birdie started in 2017. And there's a personal story of mine here where my grandfather and my grandmother lived together. My grandfather had Parkinson. My grandmother passed away quite suddenly and he declined quite rapidly. And we decided as a family to move him to a care home. And that wasn't really the best idea. He actually wasn't very happy there, and he very sadly passed away quickly afterwards. And that was, for me, a wake-up call that we should be able to let people age at home if they want to, because that's really where the vast majority of our aging population wants to be. And we got into it with my co-founders who have similar stories and really wanted to work on, can we fundamentally transform the way people age by really making sure that people get the right care at the right time by the right person in a much more personalized way. And that's how we started Birdie, saying we should be able to offer a brighter future for our elders.
Mm. And as you say, your mission is to disrupt the home care market. How exactly are you doing this?
So I think it's important to say that we're not here to disrupt the home care market, but rather to transform the home care sector by being a technology partner for the amazing care providers looking after older adults every day. And really, for us, it has been a wake-up call when we looked into this industry that this sector had been overlooked way too long and did not have the right tools and the right technologies to deliver the best care they wanted. And so this is really for us to say, let's be on that mission to partner, to empower care providers to do a better job. Why? And on one side, alleviating the pressure that they have, but at the same time, also making sure they can really improve the health outcomes of the care recipients of theirs. So that's really the intention here. We do that through different digital solutions that we have deployed, an app for the caregivers, a web app for the home care agencies, an app for the family members looking after their loved ones as well, so that really that whole community can deliver person-centered care in the most efficient and effective way.
Yeah. On top of what you've just said about what you offer, you also launched a platform in October offering billing, rostering, people tools. Why did you decide in October that was the right time? And what feedback have you had so far on this new platform?
Yeah, great question. The first thing to say is we've worked from the very beginning in partnership with all our providers. It's really important that we value that feedback we get from our partners. And they told us for many, many years, actually, we're really struggling to have a single system that works and deeply integrated between care management and, as you said, the people, the rostering and the finance part. So first thing was the feedback. At the same time, we started to have many conversations with slightly larger providers who were really struggling to gain the efficiencies, deliver that personalized care and outcomes, as Max mentioned, through their current technologies. And they were really demanding that we have a single platform. And so we really focused on adding that to the suite. And within that, we really still focus on the same key pillars, which is it's through partnership, it's easy to use, and it's really innovative and it's challenging the way that maybe the existing software works. The early feedback has been really positive. And the thing that we keep coming back to is the new customers that join us really enjoy the speed at which we develop and ship extra functionality, but more importantly, the depth at which we go to understand those problems and really solve the pain points that they're talking to us about.
Okay, thank you. How else has your company evolved since 2017, then when you launched, and how have you adapted to market changes?
I think there's a lot to say there. In 5 years, it feels like it's been 15 lives in between when we started.
Yeah.
Right? But I think it's important to say that when we looked at Birdie, we really wanted to transform the way care was delivered. And as a matter of fact, we started looking at informal caregivers because we heard countless stories of family members struggling. And looking into it and looking with a closer look at the industry, we realized that care providers were actually the ones struggling the most today. And particularly because they did not have the right technology to help them, the tooling and the processes, and they were wasting a lot of time because of that. So we actually started with, I'd say, really this B2B approach, empowering professional caregivers and care agencies, because we thought that was really the first step to really bring the industry to a better quality of care overall, partnering with them. But really the intention over time also is to support the wider community, including the family caregivers. So there's been quite a change in terms of which segment we've been working with, I'd say, or which stakeholders we've been working with, and really relentlessly focusing on building solutions to address the pain points and help them be better at their job.
Okay. In December last year, Birdie was named in the top 150 most innovative digital health startups in the world, and ranked second position in home health technology behind Honor. How was this list compiled? What were the criteria, and why do you think you were chosen?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because this category of home health tech is quite nascent, right? And it's very much in its development. But we believe there's a tremendous opportunity to transform everyone's quality of life, and particularly the ones of all the adults. And so the vision that we've had since day one at Birdie is to say, let's bring healthcare at home, because we don't want the healthcare to be always in primary, secondary care. The vast majority of our old adults, they really want to have healthcare at home. And let's make sure that it's personalized, much more preventative and much more holistic. And that is the potential of home health tech. So we've seen, low adoption of technology in home healthcare. We've seen Alexa and Google with, timer and play, to play music. But in the end, there's not a wider adoption. And what sets Birdie apart, in our view, is that we started working with the caregivers and the care providers, because these are people dealing the closest with all the adults, but also so that we can build the foundation of behavioral and clinical data to allow us to transform the care delivery pathway for all the adults, for an elderly population that has, for many of them, long-term conditions. And that is really how we can fundamentally transform this industry, by making much more preventative, much more personalized, and much more holistic, because we're working hand in hand with the carers dealing the closest with the older adults. So I think this is really why we were chosen, because we're leading the innovation and the thought leadership on home health tech, particularly in Europe, with this approach of personalized preventative care at home.
Okay. You've said in a recent blog that some technologies on the market, including rostering solutions, are failing care companies. In what ways do you think providers are being let down by some suppliers, and how are you different to them? I know you touched on this slightly, but if you could expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on something we mentioned in the blog and a couple of examples, we talked to a lot of these providers where they're starting to build out both the domiciliary care business, but also looking to support through live-in care. And the technology just isn't functional for them to have the domiciliary care business and the live-in care business in the same interface. And it becomes very complex to do billing. It becomes very complex to understand if they're profitable, what hours they are, how to retain their staff. And so, bringing that into a single easy to use platform becomes a massive leverage to having more and more hours of care delivery more efficiently. That's on the rostering side. When we think about the customers we're talking to right now that are moving more into complex care because the demand is growing for healthcare to be at home, there is just not a technology that's adequate and ready to support complex care. We hear that time and time again from our partners. So, these are demands that we're seeing from the elderly population, from the healthcare system, from policymakers, and yet there is a gap in terms of the technology to support that. And that's really the gap we're trying to fill. And we invest a lot, in the underpinning technology to enable that over time. And we're starting to see that being released over the next 6 months from us.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to artificial intelligence now, you touched upon preventative care just a second ago. The market for this kind of side of the market is set to grow globally over the next few years. In what ways are you harnessing the power of AI to help providers enhance their operations and also to improve the quality of care they deliver?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is that this trend, as you mentioned, is a global trend and particularly prevalent in healthcare. Specifically, the couple of examples that come to my mind from recent conversations are, radiologists today. They are being equipped with tools that enable them to, highlight the issues in the scan so they can really focus their time. And the benefits there are two. One is that, we can more quickly get through that workload and make sure that, the radiologist's time is being spent well. But secondly, we're highlighting those critical patient outcomes earlier. The other example that I look at is a company that is, looking at the notes within the GP record and looking for signs of cancer earlier on. And we know that if we can get to cancer earlier on, we can actually have a massive outcome benefit for the patient. So those are two examples. When we talk about healthcare specifically, in social care, we're obviously far behind that. And when we think of the two opportunities there, it's really, again, back to those two parts of the product. On the rostering side, there is just a huge opportunity to optimize, the schedules, whether it's the matching of carers to clients, whether it's the travel time optimization. These are all things that sort of exist within systems, but really haven't been adopted a lot within the sector. So that's a big area of investment for us, is how can we drive that adoption with care supervisors, care coordinators to really drive efficiency, which leads to better retention of your staff, but also actually ultimately leads to a better bottom line for you as a business, which you can then reinvest. The second part, which we've just launched in a beta, is that now that we understand the needs of a patient through the early needs that we track, we can start to recommend what's the next care assessment to provide, what's the next task, what's the next observation. And that ultimately, back to what Max mentioned, is how we deliver preventative and personalized care in the home. We're going to provide those tools to help carers ultimately to do the best thing for that patient in the short amount of time they have with their clients.
Okay. Have you considered, I'm not sure if you do this already, supplying sensors that can be used in the home to detect things like falls, someone waking up and getting out of bed in the night, that kind of thing, to enable preventative care?
Yeah, I can take that. I can take that one. So
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We have historically we have we've worked with many partnerships. One being Tunstall, where we've looked at technologies that can start to monitor what's going on in the home, and we've adopted that. Put that into our product, and we've had very early signs that we can detect falls, or we can see early signs that someone might have a UTI. I think the first thing we've learned through that process is that needs to be embedded within a core platform that the agency is already using. And so where our focus has become right now is driving that adoption of our core platform first. And when we see more modern technology coming out, things that are now being used in, for example, self-driving cars, that can really both drive better data, but also be privacy first, we see those as being the future technologies. And we are actively always sourcing those technologies and testing those. But we also think the market's a little bit early for that right now.
Okay, sure, thank you. And last year, in early 2021, Birdie announced that it had raised $11.5 million in venture capital. How have you used that investment so far?
So we've used it in multiple ways. For us, really, we raised funding last year because we felt there were so many pain points among care providers that we hadn't addressed yet. And one example is the people and ops module that we launched, is this rostering and the billing and invoicing. And then beyond that, we think of finance and a lot more things in the pipeline that Raj and his team are building. So we've been relentlessly building new products with that funding last year, and we'll carry on over the coming month. For us also, it's been really the opportunity to, as Raj talked about it earlier, focus on outcomes and thinking about, okay, what does it take to really identify patterns to actually intervene earlier in the care journey, so that really all the adults have the best health outcome possible. So we've been increasingly investing in that side of the research as well with that funding.
And what's new for 2022 in terms of new features and enhancements? Can you let us into any secrets?
Yeah, I mean the big ones, and it's worth saying that this constant focus on listening to our customers remains our focus. We have some really large partners. We're excited, to go live with the product later this year, and there's many more functionalities we need to build out there. I think the other two bits I mentioned is we continue to invest in the rostering part of the product in terms of really driving the optimization. We know there's a huge efficiency gain for almost any agency that delivers care in the community through that part. And the other part that we're really excited about is that we've struggled to find software that really supports an agency through the different types of care that are being delivered, whether that is domiciliary care, extra care, live-in care, and complex care. And so having a solution that really allows all those different types of care delivery, which we're seeing from our large partners, is something that we're really focusing on for the remaining parts of the year, and there'll be many launches around that side as well. And then the final part to mention is that, as Max said, we're continuing to build these rules and recommendations within the product to really support the decisions that the care managers are making and learn from them.
Right, thank you. And what are your ambitions for the next 5 years? Where do you see yourselves being in terms of the wider sector?
I think there's three areas which are really areas of focus for us. The first one is to keep building solutions for care providers so that they can deliver better care, and that means more efficient and effective care, where carers should be facing the clients and not doing admin or commute too long and so on. And I think Raj mentioned a few of that. And there's a lot more we can do to help care providers and caregivers. But then the second thing is then to really focus on the research side of things. And I mentioned earlier, how can we actually measure the health outcomes of an older adults being cared for? How can we then improve these health outcomes and measure that? And how can we really enable the system and the wider system to actually incentivize care providers to keep in mind the health and well-being of an older adult once we can demonstrate that? Because for us, really the holy grail here, as we call it, is value-based healthcare. We shouldn't be having a system in healthcare that is basically providing care based on task and hours, but much more on what are the results of these interventions. And so we'd like to empower the industry to move towards that direction. It's a very bold and ambitious goal, but we believe we can achieve that thanks to the data and the partnership we have. And then the third thing is to do that in the UK, but also to expand internationally, because we have again and again the same issues across the globe. In Europe, and every geographies you're looking at, every country is facing the same challenges in terms of growing, dependent older population, desperately in need for better support. And we're really, really excited to support care providers across Europe.
Yeah, can I just ask, is there any nations that the home care sector in the UK could learn from, do you think, and in terms of best practice?
I think, to be honest, that the UK is doing very well on many fronts. And let me give you a couple of examples. I think the CQC and the level of regulation that we have through the CQC, so the Care Quality Commission, is by far the most advanced across the geographies that we know. And I know it can be a huge burden on care providers, but it's also ensuring that care recipients are really well cared for. And we don't see the same regulation or the same monitoring, I'd say, in other geographies. It also pushes care providers to continuously think about innovation, to really be forward thinking in terms of technology adoption, new practices, and so on, so that they can deliver the best care. Again, this is not something we see elsewhere. So I think the UK is leading the way in many aspects. Now, what's clearly missing in the UK is a bit of funding, and we keep talking about that, meaning that the care providers are very much under huge pressure, and the margins are very tight. In other geographies, you have funding flows and funding mechanisms which make care providers slightly more comfortable from a financial standpoint. And I think the UK could learn from that, not only from an amount perspective, but also in terms of how the budget is allocated, who makes a decision, and based on what results. And this is really where we're excited to drive that policy change forward together with our partners.
Okay, thanks so much, Max and Raj. I really appreciate your time.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks very much.